Good afternoon again, and welcome to Timothy Matthis, the founder of Genex. Welcome to the Customer Experience Management 2017 Summit. What is your take been on the summit thus far?
Thank you very much for the intro. So my name is Timothy from Genex Insights. It's been a really fantastic couple of days. I think it's really encouraging for vendors in this space and for participants in the industry to be part of something that is growing year on year. We've been really fortunate to be in the industry for the last 8 or 9 years, and year on year, more and more people attend. The content of the presentations and the audience is ever growing. I think we're all challenging each other, so really exciting to be a part of this landscape. Nice to see businesses putting customers at the center of everything they do.
Perfect. So we're going to move straight into some questions that we'd like you to take a look at. In terms of the extent of new technologies, and specifically around the topic of the day, which is pretty predominant, artificial intelligence and virtual reality, and how will it take over in creating experiences that are unique to the individual in driving customer engagement?
So I suppose that's the question that's on everybody's minds at the moment. Artificial intelligence and I suppose hyper-digitization of experiences is it's really on the forefront of everything at the moment. And Gartner, I don't know if you've come across Gartner, they're really good at describing the adoption of new technologies in terms of, in the context of something called the hype cycle. And I think it's really important for us to sort of look at this with a small amount of measured conservatism and remember that this is the next big hype cycle. And with that be, I suppose, a little bit responsible in our expectations. So a few years ago, customer experience management was very much going to that real peak of inflated expectations, much like artificial intelligence is now. And I think it's more important to draw some of the lessons from what we've seen happen in the customer experience space and I suppose the failure of some of those incredible promises that we saw in customer experiences when we look at artificial intelligence. I suppose this is a way of saying that it probably won't deliver on all of the incredible promises that everybody expects it to as fast as we expect it to. That said, it will change things. I think we can look forward to more personalized experiences at an individual level. In the sort of historical context in market research, organizations would define segments as really a trade-off between what a business could afford to do in terms of defining 6 or 7 or perhaps 8 different customer segments and service those at a value proposition level. Whereas the promise of hyper-personalization, which will come off the back of artificial intelligence, is that there'll be segments of one. So you'll have an individual person who is able to get just the services they want when they want them, product suites that are very much designed around the needs of that individual. But in reality, I think this is probably quite a long way off. What we typically tend to see is that there's an excitement around the promise of the real cutting edge of what technology can deliver, and people expect that right now. In reality, artificial intelligence in South Africa has really only been implemented in a few organizations, and mostly in the form of chatbots and things like Conversation Advisor from Watson. And a lot of the sort of the excitement for the future isn't quite here. So I would just caution a little bit of sort of healthy skepticism, not getting too radical about the adoption of these things. And remember some of the fundamental basics around servicing people and what our customers want, to not get too carried away in the hype of the next big thing, which is artificial intelligence.
That's key, which leads into the next question, right? Is the technological advancements in technology and the likes of AI and VR, the ability now to transcend that capability. And yes, there is still a long journey that we are going to go on. From a measurement perspective, is there any significant trend that we can start talking about now in terms of considering these advancements that relates to measuring customer service? Is it too early, or do we have measurements at the moment?
So I think that's a really interesting question. Probably the thing that jumps out for me most profoundly is that in the advance of customer experience management firms and the ability of those firms to send out transactional surveys, which is what we see a lot in the market, people talking about surveying in the context of the touch points. One of the key enablers that's come to the fore recently is the ability for multi-channel platforms to survey every single touch point. It leaves you in a situation around the world where many millions of surveys have been deployed on a monthly basis. Even in the South African context, many millions have been. And globally, not just here. I was in fact in Melbourne a couple of months ago at a similar conference, and one of the mega trends that is happening is that there's a global collapse in response rates. So you're finding that people are becoming very rapidly fatigued with transactional surveys. I'm relating this really to the survey space. And as a result, we need to be thinking about what's going to come next in terms of how we get customer feedback. So customer experience management and the technology that came with us promised us the ability to conduct research at a much lower price point per interview, and it's also destroyed its own market because too many people are sending too many surveys. So the mega trend is really to look at where we're going to get those insights from once we've all adopted these transactional survey programs and gotten to a position where very few customers are actually now willing to give feedback about transactions. And the obvious answer there is that with the advances that we are seeing in unstructured data analytics, artificial intelligence, neural networks, really what that gives us profoundly that we didn't have in the past is the ability to create meaning in what was historically unstructured data, and this big shift away from asking customers to being able to proactively listen to customers in the channels that they're communicating to us without actually having to ask them for particular responses. So the ability to analyze data in the obvious channels like Twitter and Facebook, but also in real time to be able to listen to voice. And this is where you see a convergence of a number of different businesses coming together. So businesses like Genesis, global players who've focused on looking at voice, start to converge with text analytics companies, start to converge with businesses that are mining insights out of emails. And we find ourselves in a future 4 or 5 years from now where the real challenge is bringing the correct analytical structure to unstructured data in order to drive insights in businesses and to move away from the standard net promoter score questions and the standard overall satisfaction questions with key driver analytics. So if I were to say there's one key thing that's happening in the measurement space, it would be that. It would be a shift away from measurement, ironically, or at least survey-driven measurement.
So you've already effectively answered my next question, which was around the measurement side of it. But that's exactly where it's at. Effectively, we will do away with measurement, effectively. In terms of brand measuring, because that's where it's going to go to next, right? And you've already touched base on the unstructured component of this, right? In the various channels, social media, today it's social media, tomorrow it's going to be something very, very different. The digital engagement to drive insights, is there merit in brands exploring unstructured data to be able to start looking into measuring the brand?
So certainly there is, and maybe just to take a complete sort of segue in a different direction here, one of the other narratives that's come out of this conference, which I think is very important, so I'll get back to the question about and analyzing unstructured data, but I'm always quite profoundly struck by the fact that with all the innovation that goes on, we often lose sight of some of the very fundamental basics. And one of the fundamental basics that's so important in the customer experience space that we're starting to see come through quite strongly in this conference this year as well is the importance of people. So there's been a talk about the humanizing of experiences from a customer perspective. There's been talk about customer employee engagement survey models, and I really feel that that's a shift that's happening as well, which is quite important to see. So whilst we sort of quite obsessed at the moment with getting feedback from customers in large volume, whether it's Facebook or social media, whatever else it might be, we are only starting to awaken ourselves to the reality that the people who deliver those experiences are our employees. So MultiChoice did some really interesting stuff. They've won all the awards here, but we helped them with a program to have a look at how their employees perceive the experience that they are delivering to their customers. And so there's something called the Heshet service value chain, and the idea is really premised on this simple notion that a happy employee is able to deliver good customer service. And what we showed in that case study, which I think is quite fascinating, is that 63% of the customer experience at MultiChoice is explained by their employee experience. And I think that the shift is probably going to move, although it's also moving towards understanding the unstructured data universe and social media. I think another shift that's happening is towards the importance of our people and getting back to understanding, are they given the tools that they need to deliver the functions that they are supposed to fulfill for their customers? And in the employee engagement space, a lot of it is again premised in old theories. So Abraham Maslow came up with a hierarchical needs model where he spoke about, in order to sort of actualize in life, you begin with needing to have shelter and food. And a lot of and once you've got shelter and food, that is no longer the important thing. Then other things become more important in your life, right? So they fall away as you sort of attain them. And in employee engagement, we see exactly the same thing. So we find that people in businesses often don't have the fundamentals. They don't have or employees in businesses don't have the tools that they need to deliver the functions that they're supposed to be delivering to their customers. And we found that quite profound. So in the same case study, what we discovered was that while 63% of customer experience is explained by employee experience, the key driver within that was just having the tools that an organization that they needed in order to deliver that experience. And I feel that that's a really important shift in narrative now. And as customer experiences become more mature, we talk about more data, but the more data that's probably most important right now is not more big data, it's more data from more people and more stakeholders. So expanding the number of people we are talking to and getting feedback from. Often our people know the pain points more than anybody, more than the customer do. The customers experience the pain, but our employees know what's generating the pain, and we can go to them and understand that. So I see that as an important shift as well.
Thank you again for providing your time for the interview this afternoon. It's Timothy Matthis, the founder of Genex. We're going to be hashtagging right through the day. The hashtags will be at Timothy Matthis, at Genex South Africa. I'm going to hand the microphone over for some last statement from you.
Yeah, I think a big shout out to the guys at Kinetic, all my fellow sponsors as well. I think it's been a really fantastic couple of days, and we really look forward to continuing to grow this industry together. We're passionate believers in customer experience and all things research at Genex. So thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. We look forward to seeing you again next year. It's live from the Customer Experience Management 2000 on the second day in the afternoon. We'll be back shortly with the further interview.